All right, well, we're going to be doing some general maintenance on the Ventrac Aera-vator today. I noticed when I was doing a job last week that when I was finishing up, I'd pick up the power head unit and the tines wouldn't quit spinning like they're supposed to. So typically that means your belts are a little bit out of adjustment. So when I went in to do the belt adjustment, I noticed that the belts had a lot of wear and tear on them and they really needed to be replaced. So I've got the 3 drive belts with me today, and we're going to be doing a tutorial on how to replace those drive belts, and then also doing an adjustment on it to make sure that the clutch system is working properly. So in order to get this cover plate off, we've got 3 bolts around the top side of the plate, and then we've got 2 on bottom, and then we've got your clutch handle that's locked up with your locking pin. First thing you need to do is get that locking pin out and lower that clutch handle down to get some of the tension off of it. Of course, I got a few bolts missing around mine that I need to get replaced. So now that we've got this plate off, you can see here the clutch pulley, and then here's the drive pulley. This is what gives it power from the tractor, and this is the pulley that runs the tines. And these are the 3 drive belts that we're trying to get after to replace. So the next thing is going to be getting this shield off that goes around the 3 drive belts. There's 3 bolts that hold it on. There's 2 bolts inside that act sort of like guides for the drive belts, keep them from jumping off the pulley. One up towards the top next to the drive pulley. This is what you're actually going to tension up to allow your power head to engage and disengage. It actually moves up and down. This bottom one is just there just for support. Last thing to do is get this clutch pulley off, and this is a 9/16 nut on the end of it. Only thing we need to do is get this clutch pulley off. If you were trying to get the bolt and everything out, you'd have to pull this clutch handle back, and it'll line that bolt up through that hole so to slide out. So now these drive belts just spin off freely. In order to get them to do that, you need to have the power head lifted off the ground so that the pulley up front spins freely. And then you also need to unhook the PTO belt off the front of the tractor so that the drive pulley spins freely. Taking a look at this first drive belt, you can see a lot of cracking in between the teeth. And it's got a few chunks missing on the outside of it. I guess where it got in a bind maybe and rubbed against the shield. This unit was used when I bought it, so not really sure how many hours it's got on these belts. This is the belt and part number we're going to be using. This is a Ventrac belt, 81.BX038. I find it easier just to use their belts. They might be a little bit more expensive, but you don't have to guess and check on the sizes, and I can just pick them up at my local distributor. But all this is in the parts manual or the operator's manual. You can download both of them on the Ventrac website. So if you have any questions in regards to the parts or process that we're doing today, you can always check back there. Well, this right here explains a lot. I've got the new belt laying on top and the old belt on bottom, and you can see the old belt is at least a ½ inch smaller than it should be. And this tells me a lot from just past experience on trying to get this thing adjusted correctly to where it disengages when you lift it up. Had a really hard time. I finally got it to where it would not do it, but had a really difficult time, and I never understood why. And this is why, because the old belt just did not have enough slack to disengage from the drive pulley. So here's the old belt, and you can see how it'll go on, but you have to really spin and push it. And here's the new belt. Just pushes on without even any effort. This clutch pulley, when we put it back on, it has a bearing here that allows it to spin. So if you ever tighten it, this pulley won't spin. So it's important to get this thing the proper tightness. So we got a torque wrench set on 31 foot-pounds of torque. If you notice, the bolt holes are actually elongated, so it gives you some room for adjustment up and down on this belt shield. And if you just take a look at the manual, Ventrac recommends that you keep about a 1/16 inch gap around the belts and the front pulley. Now just to replace these belt retainer bolts. So you can see the belt is almost rubbing the bottom of this head of the bolt. So we're just going to back this bolt off until about where we want it. And I'm going to give it about a 1/16 or so inch gap. And then we're just going to tighten up this nut right here against the plate, and that'll hold it in place. So we're going to do the same thing with this back retainer bolt. you can see that the hole on it is actually elongated, so we got room to move it up and down, and this allows you to adjust it to where you get these belts to pull away from this drive pulley. So we're going to start off with adjusting it about the center of that height adjustment hole, up and down. I really don't know where it's supposed to end up being because the belts that I had were so short. It's going to be totally different than what I used to have it at. So you'll see as I lower this power unit down to the ground, it actually puts some upward pressure on those front tines, and that's what engages the clutch system, and the clutch handle will move forward, and then the clutch pulley moves downward, putting some tension on the belts. And that back pulley, which is your drive pulley, is actually spinning all the time if the tractor was running, and then when it puts tension on the belt, that's what transfers the force up to the power head, and that's what engages the tines. All right, so let's go see how it does with the tractor running and see if we can get it to engage and disengage properly. Looks pretty good. That was extremely easy compared to the challenges that I had earlier with the wrong belts. There's one other adjustment to mention that I did when I first got the unit, and you can look it up in the manual. It's pretty straightforward too, but you basically take the top plate off right here, and there's some springs that you just lift off of those bolts and a turnbuckle, and that turnbuckle actually connects that shaft that runs over to your clutch handle. So here's your clutch handle and your pulley that we talked about, and it will actually give you more or less clearance up under this pulley to help get your adjustment correct as well. So it's just worth mentioning. If none of this works for you, that might be a better place to start. All right, well, I appreciate y'all watching. That went a lot quicker and smoother than I thought it would, and that's just a prime example of why I like to buy the Ventrac belts. If you got any questions or comments, leave them in the section below. I'll try to answer them.